want to welcome anyone who's come on, and we will get started here. And Wanda Tuma-McDermott from Messiah College is our moderator today, and so I will turn it over to her.
Hi, I'm Wanda. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Considering my college-issued laptop is a little bit of a problem sometimes with Zoom. Okay, good. I'll try to speak clearly also and not mumble. That's one of my nasty habits, according to my husband. So welcome to this webinar about matcha. And when Paul asked if I had a PowerPoint, I figured most of you would have more pictures than I. And the only one that I came up with was this one that he has on the screen, a shared screen. And this is from the top of the water tower. And for me, it's kind of the bird's eye view of matcha, and the complex matcha is now straight in front of you in the picture with the brightest rooftops is the matcha research area. The hospital complex is hidden in the trees to the right. You can barely see that it's there. And this is the rainy season, so everything is green and overgrown. What has struck me is that this has been accomplished in about 50 years. The mission complex is kind of to the left of the picture. The original mission was started about 100 years ago. 2006 was their centenary, 1906. It is a Brethren in Christ church mission. It is now, the whole complex is now owned by the Zambian Brethren in Christ. The kind of village area, the kind of everything is primary schools, secondary schools, the hospital complex, outreach, some stores. There's a market area. There are multiple houses that are there for staff. You were supposed to provide housing for staff. So there's this bit of a village. And then there's the hospital area, and there's the research area, and there's also a nurses training school. So all of that to kind of give you the big picture of matcha. I can barely remember when the original building was built. I remember playing on the sand piles. My father was the first doctor to apply to the Brethren in Christ World Missions. And so they sent him out of what was then Southern Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, north to start Macha Mission Hospital. They surveyed it, and this is where it would be. He had connections to the Mennonites and Anabaptists because he had graduated from Goshen College. He was in the Philly area for med school and was one of the original of the Mennonite Medical Association. And so we had connections throughout the years. There were 1Ws who came for alternate service to help build. MCC provided nurses. Sometimes tappers came. A lot of times wives were nurses, and they helped. They taught at the nursing school. The first official nurse tutor came from Goshen. She'd been teaching at Goshen. There have been salters in and out of the system, and currently there are 2 of them there, and I'm very proud. One of them is a Messiah nursing grad who was with me on the January term and is now back teaching at the nursing school after teaching at Trim1. But things have really grown. Multiple others have contributed to all the services and the complex that is there today. I was interested, I just found out recently, I'm writing a Jubilee or 50th anniversary history of the nurses training school, that the impetus for the building program was actually that they needed buildings for the training school. They needed a maternity ward. They needed a theater for surgery. And it just struck me how holistic sometimes and interprofessional we need to be as we work together. So yes, I was born and bred at Macha, and it is my home village. And since I have taught at Messiah College, I'm privileged to take nursing students there in our January term for an alternate senior practicum. So I've been there back almost every year. in January. So I've not seen any of you as such, because I think you tend to come at other times. But you know my brother Phil. Phil is still involved with Macha Research Trust now. And I think he was also the one that made the connections for Penn State's program, and how some of you have probably gotten to Macha through that. So I'm really happy to be here today introducing Macha. And those of you that did set there, I'm very happy you did it. So go ahead. Brianna, I think, is starting first.
All right, so I did connect with Macha through Mennonite Healthcare Fellowship as well as through Penn State. So I went there in February of 2015, which was my 4th year in medical school. And this is a picture in front of the hospital with myself. And then the person next to me, his name is Brendan. He was also a medical student from the Netherlands who had been there for about a month and a half before I arrived, and really was a really good mentor for me, showed me around the hospital and kind of helped me get used to how things worked in Macha. And so we did a lot of work together the month that I was there. So I was going to just talk a little bit about kind of why I chose to do this, but first just a little bit about myself. So I graduated from Eastern Mennonite University in 2011, studied biochemistry, and was on the pre-med track. And like I said, went to Penn State Hershey College of Medicine, where I graduated in 2015. So my trip to Macha was in my last year. And then I stayed in Pennsylvania and went to Lancaster General Hospital for a family medicine residency, which I just completed this past June. And while I was there, I did specific areas of concentration, which basically just means extra time, clinical time, in global health and maternity care, which were 2 of my major interests, and also something that I think really came from, in part, from my time at Macha. And then I stayed with the family medicine residency program, and now I'm faculty at the program. And so I have kind of a few different roles in that setting, but I do see patients at a family practice called Family and Maternity Medicine. And then I also help with teaching the residents, both in the clinic setting, in the hospital setting, and also on the labor and delivery floor. So still get to do kind of that broad spectrum medicine that that I first saw in Macha and really enjoyed doing. And I also am assisting another faculty member with the global health curriculum, because that is still something I'm really interested in, and working with the residents to kind of set up global health experiences for them, because I think probably, as everyone is going to speak to today, not only is it great if you have an interest in global health, it's just a really awesome learning opportunity for medicine in general. So that's a little bit about me. And like I said, I went to Macha in 2015, and I went through the SET program, and I actually heard about that through Carol Spiker, who is a member of Mennonite Healthcare Fellowship and also is really good friends with one of my friends. And so she had said, I know you have an interest in global health, why don't you consider this program? So my interest in medicine actually began after a trip to Haiti that I did with my church in 10th grade in high school. And we went as a whole team to work with, it was actually an American nurse who lived in Darial, Haiti, which is south and on the coast. And he had a clinic there, and we had an opportunity to work with him in the clinic. And I felt like he kind of used his medical skills to build trust with the community, and then had built his clinic and then ended up building a church and a school, and really kind of used medicine to integrate into the community and bring a lot of positive things to the community. And I thought that was a really neat thing, and that really spurred my interest in medicine in general. And so it was after that trip that I started thinking about pursuing a career in medicine, and because of that really was looking for opportunities to continue seeing medicine in a global setting as well as locally. So in medical school, I had the opportunity to do several different medical mission trips, I guess I would call them, but most of them or all of them were just short trips, so a week or a week and a half, where you would kind of go in, set up a clinic, and come back out. And a lot of that felt really difficult because you never knew what happened to the patients. You didn't feel like there was a great kind of infrastructure or medical system for follow-up. And so I was really looking for an opportunity where I could be in an established medical center where I knew the patients would be followed up, but I could really learn how to practice medicine in a resource-poor setting and just in a context where there's different diseases and different processes than we see here. So this seemed like an awesome opportunity for that. And I also just wanted some more hands-on skills and more practice with physical exam. And so this was also an excellent opportunity to do that. So that's kind of why I chose to go. And Macha was one of the options that was offered to me. And I actually had some friends who had graduated from Messiah and had gone to Macha during college. And so when I was talking with them about options, they're like, I think that would be a great setting for you. There's a lot of really neat opportunities and research opportunities. So that was the reason that I chose that. So I was just going to talk a little bit about kind of my experience there and some of the influential memories that I have from that trip. So this is just a picture of the outside of the hospital. And while I was there, I was able to help in kind of all parts of the hospital. So on the inpatient wards, in the operating theater, and also in the outpatient department. So I just have a few pictures. I figured since I was going first, I was just going to give a little bit of background information, and I apologize if this gets repeated. But this was true as of when I was there, so you guys can definitely correct me if there's things that have changed. But it is a rural hospital, about 200-bed hospital in Macha, Zambia, like we talked about, and that's about an hour from Choma, which is the closest large town, and then Livingston would be kind of the closest big city where you could fly into. And in terms of, a rotation opportunity for medical students or for residents, it's a very hands-on learning experience, and the hospital complex does have adult and pediatric inpatient hospital medicine. They have a maternity unit, they have an operating room, and they have an outpatient facility, as well as a specific HIV clinic, x-ray resources, so a really kind of comprehensive health complex. When I was there, there were 2 American physicians and 3 Zambian physicians, so that may be different at this point. And then there were multiple clinical officers, which I feel like I always explain to people, kind of like a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant in our countries with a lot of clinical experience, but just a different amount of kind of school training compared to the physicians. And then, as we talked about with the complex, the nursing school is right across the street, and there's the malaria research campus next to the hospital, so a lot of learning opportunities in the complex, which I thought was a really neat thing. So these were just some pictures of the wards themselves. So certainly different than the hospital that I currently work in, where they just transitioned to single patient rooms for every patient in the hospital. Obviously, there's multiple beds in these wards. And this was just a closer up view. I spent a lot of time in the female ward. So this was the female ward of the hospital with all the beds and the mosquito nets over the beds. Although luckily, because of the malaria research center, there really wasn't a whole lot of malaria, which was very impressive to me and very different from some of the other global health experiences that I've had. And then this was just one of the operating rooms. There were 3 at the time that I was there, but this was the main operating room where they did kind of the more time-intensive procedures. And then this is a picture from the outside of the outpatient department. So when I was there, we would often be in the hospital or in the operating room in the morning, and then the afternoons would be spent in the outpatient facility, which I would describe kind of as a mix between an urgent care and a family practice office, because you could really have anything come in there, even emergency room type things, because there really wasn't an emergency room. Everyone came through that facility. So I remember the first couple of days I was there by myself, and that was a big change as a 4th-year medical student, kind of being the one that would see patients, but there were a lot of really supportive people there, and they'd always come and bail me out if I needed help. So I was going to just share a few clinical experiences that I had, and one was actually from my first day. So that's me and Brendan. Again, the first day that I was there was an operating day, and so I remember it being a really long morning. There were lots of operations lined up, and we were just getting ready to break for the day, and we heard that there was a C-section, or patient needing the C-section, coming from one of the local health centers. So this hospital was one of the only hospitals in the area that had operating capabilities and could do cesarean section. So often if women were in the more rural health centers and something went wrong, they would be referred to Macha. So we were just about to leave for the day, and they said, no, this woman is coming. And the story was that she was pregnant and that her due date was in December. And remember, this was February. So already it was sounding a little bit odd. And then the reason that she was being sent in was that they had been unable to get a fetal heart rate at the clinic. So all of us were feeling very kind of overwhelmed and really sad, thinking that here we're going to be at the end of the day having to do an operation for a baby that likely had already died. So the woman came into the operating room, and we also tried to get fetal heart rate and could not get it. So everyone was preparing for a very kind of sad surgery. And I remember this was my first day, so I was very jet lagged and culture shocked. And I was just standing there thinking, I don't know if I can handle this, seeing this surgery for a baby that isn't going to survive. So they had me kind of being, I say in quotes, the anesthesiologist, like watching vital signs and giving oxygen if needed, and doing those things. So I was at the top of the bed, and I remember being there and seeing that the surgeon had broken to the amniotic sac and the fluid sprayed, and they pulled out the baby, and the baby looked blue, and the cord was wrapped around the baby's neck, I think 2 or 3 times. The surgeon unwrapped the cord, and the baby just started crying. And I think everybody in the operating room started crying too, because here we were thinking that, you know, this was going to be a dead baby, and the story was very, very concerning. And the baby did just fine. Baby was crying, absolutely healthy. Mom was happy. And so I just remember that being, you know, a really neat medical moment, and also to me was a big God moment, because I remember just being like, I don't think I could handle this on my first day. And then it was this beautiful story. So that to me was one of the most memorable experiences, and was just there on my first day. But lots of good stories from that month. So as I was thinking a little bit more about lessons that I learned from this setting, I looked back on a PowerPoint that I had made for other medical students. And Leah, I don't know, you may have even seen this.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But I had put down these things, and as I was reading through them again, I was like, wow, these still are really true, and I think really important things that I learned from Macha. So I think one of the most important things was this idea of context-specific care and how we give good care to our patients in the context that we're in. So one of the stories that I remember telling that time and still sticks out in my mind is one morning when I came into the female ward, and there was a woman there who had asthma, and she was having an acute asthma exacerbation, and she was like sitting upright, breathing very quickly, very wheezy when I listened to her, could not talk. And I'm like, oh boy, I need to do something immediately. And none of the doctors were in the hospital yet. So I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, it's me. I need to do something. So I started asking for all the things that I knew to treat an asthma exacerbation. So I asked for albuterol and a nebulizer treatment and oxygen. And the nurses just looked at me and were like, what are you asking for? We don't have any of that. And and then I started going, well, do you have steroids? Do you have this? Everything that I knew that you could use to treat asthma. And they didn't have any of it. And then I started panicking. I was like, what do I do? So I started running around the hospital, and I found one of the doctors, and I said, this is the situation, and I tried this, and this, and we don't have any of it. And he just laughed at me, and he's like, that's a very good thought. Those are all things you can use to treat asthma, but we don't have them in Macha. In Macha, we have aminophylline, and you give it through the IV, and it helps. So we went back to the ward, and he told the nurses, and they gave it, and all of a sudden she was just fine. And I was like, what is this medicine? I've never heard of it. And so I think, I looked it up and realized it was an older drug that we don't use in the United States anymore, but it works. It absolutely works. And I think that was a really good learning moment for me, because it helped me to realize that you really have to understand your context and the patients that you are treating, because having all the knowledge in the world isn't going to help you if you don't have the tools that you need. And so developing the ability to use what you have is really important. And I feel like I learned that a lot about that while I was in Macha. And I think coming along with that went some of these other things, being willing to learn, being willing to ask questions and be flexible, And I think one of the most common questions that I asked was, how do you treat this here? Because I found myself at first being like, well, at home I would do this. And then I was like, it's not useful for me to always be comparing to the United States. I really need to learn how things are done here. And so I tried to make that a goal while I was there, to learn from everyone around me and figure out, you know, how did they do things? And it was really neat to see that there's so many different ways that we can handle the same medical condition. So I feel like I gained a lot of knowledge from that. And then I think also, I just felt like there were a lot of joys, like the story I shared with you, and also a lot of frustrations. And it really helped me knowing that I would probably see both of those in the same day. And so I feel like I made a point of journaling while I was there, which I don't normally do, but I would just write about the things where I really felt like I saw God, or these really joy moments. And then I would write about the frustrating things as well. And so as I was preparing for this talk, I went back and read those things, and that was just a really neat thing to read again. And it also made me realize how much I've learned in my medical training since that time. As I was reading a description of myself doing my first cervical exam ever, which was quite an interesting thing because it didn't seem like I had any idea what I was doing. And now being able to look back and see, oh, that's something I do on a regular basis without difficulty. So yeah, so I feel like there was a lot of joy, a lot of frustration, and a lot of learning. And as I was reading through my journal, this is one thing that I found that I had written, which as I read it, I think is really true. And this was something that Dr. Tuma, I guess summarizing what Dr. Tuma had said to me. But this was when we were rounding one Saturday morning in the pediatric ward. And he said that he found practicing medicine in Zambia more intellectually stimulating, as it challenged him to come up with a diagnosis without the aid of machines or computers. He feels that treating patients here requires him to be skilled in history taking and physical examination, and encourages creativity, because when his first treatment plan doesn't work, he is required to try something else rather than referring to a specialist. And I had written at the time that I found that perspective encouraging and refreshing. And I think as I walked away from that experience, and also at some of the other global health experiences that I've done, I really agree with this opinion. I think practicing medicine in another setting really helps you to cement your physical exam skills, to really is intellectually stimulating and challenging. And so I think from a learning perspective, it's an invaluable thing to have as part of your training. So just to kind of sum up, you know, I kind of already touched on this, but I had this interest in global health before I went to Macha, and after that experience, that was really cemented in for me. And so I had pursued some additional training during my time as a resident, had done the area of concentration, which included extra clinical time abroad, as well as additional learning and conferences. And I had the opportunity to spend a month in Malawi during my second year, and then a month at Shirati Hospital in Tanzania during my third year. And I feel like each of those experiences have kind of built off of each other. And then now I am helping with some of the planning and organizing of the global health curriculum at Lancaster General Hospital. So this is certainly an experience that impacted my life and made a difference in kind of my career choices and in my development as a physician, and I'm extremely thankful for that. So thank you to the Mennonite Healthcare Fellowship for supporting these scholarships.
Wanda, I think you're on mute, so.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brianna. Thank you very much. And Paul was going to get Katie's next, I believe.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, it is Katie.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Mic's on. So my name is Katie. Paul, you can go ahead and go to the next slide if you want. So a little bit about me. So I am from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I did grow up kind of I grew up in a Mennonite family and have a little bit of a missionary background. My parents served for several years in Shirati, Tanzania. So they were working at the Shirati hospital there, and I was born actually over in Nairobi. But, you know, my parents moved back when I was still pretty little, so I didn't grow up extensively over there, but kind of grew up in that background, a very globally minded background, which I appreciate with the Mennonite culture. I think is a very global focus as well. So I'd kind of grown up in that, and like I said, my dad was a doctor growing up. And then, yeah, I went to Eastern University. I went to Lancaster Mennonite for high school in Lancaster, and then went to Eastern University for college, which is a small liberal arts college on the main line outside of Philly. Did there, and then I moved into the city, and then ended up going to Temple University in Philly for medical school. And lived in North Philly for a couple years, and ended up doing my student elective term in the spring of my fourth year. So similar to Brianna, it was a good time to do it the fourth year. So I went through medical school in Temple, and then am currently actually living out in Oregon, in Southern Oregon. I'm at a rural family medicine program, part of the OHSU umbrella, but they're rural crew down south, and I'm a third year out there. Paul, you can go ahead. Yeah, perfect. So as far as how I ended up doing a student elective term, so like I said, I had kind of grown up with a more global health focused family, and had several different experiences abroad. I've been to Africa a couple times and had some varying experiences during college, and just really enjoyed both international travel and just learning about different cultures has always really interested me. And so when I decided to go into medicine, a big part of that was, hey, I could do this kind of anywhere I wanted to in the world, because you can meet a need anywhere. And that was really appealing to me. So even from the beginning of kind of my medical career, I've been really interested in using it to work and be abroad. And so in med school, I was kind of involved with, there's a global health crew in med school as well. And then started looking at being able to do a rotation abroad, and I had heard about SET from a couple different, my family was involved with Mennonite Health Fellowship, heard about it from them, from Carol Spiker also, and then a guy actually who had graduated from Temple a couple years before me had been to Macha as well, Johnny, so I heard about it from him too. So kind of a couple different people had told me, like, hey, you can get some funding through the Mennonite Health Fellowship, and they have a couple different places people have gone before. And I had an interesting, another connection, Wanda, which you'll appreciate. I actually went to college with Corey Tuma, who is married to Eric Tuma, who's Phil's son, and they're living there now. So I actually knew about Macha through Corey, and so knew she was living over there, and was excited to go see her there too. So that was really fun. So I had known about Macha. I'd actually been to Zambia once before previously. And so kind of put it all together and decided I would love to spend a month in Zambia. So I went there and actually got to live with Corey and Eric while I was there, which was really, really awesome. So yeah, Brianna, thank you for giving kind of the intro about Macha, because I couldn't remember all of those statistics. But yeah, so we all ended up at this Macha Mission Hospital here in Macha. And just a little bit, maybe I can expand, the hospital was great. The town is also really, really fun. So I think I had a bit of an in because I was living with Corey and Eric, but there's just a great community of people, and they're doing really awesome work there. And people are very, very excited to have other people coming, and so welcoming. And so it's just a fun place to live for a couple weeks. So when I got there, they have three main wards. They have the OB ward, which is kind of their labor and delivery, and then post-pregnancy care area. They have the peds ward, and then they have the general wards, so the male and female wards there. And so they kind of told me I could split up my time between whatever wards I wanted to. So Paul, why don't you go on back to the OB slide? So my first 2 weeks I ended up doing on the labor and delivery area, which was really great and a little bit crazy. So a very different labor and delivery experience than I had seen here in the States. But basically they have just a little, like a labor and delivery room with these very hard beds that the women would basically kind of stay outside actually until they were like very actively in labor, and then would come into the hospital and go into the L&D room and then deliver there. But it was really great. I got to help do a lot of deliveries. And of course, these women, like, there's no epidurals or anesthesia. They did have some local to help with repairs and stuff like that. And we legitimately listened for heart tones with like those hilarious like old trumpets, which was also eye-opening. So it was just fun to get to see, L&D care without kind of our common things now with fetal monitoring and all that sort of stuff. There were also just very interesting cultural norms around giving birth that were a little bit crazy, such as they would really, really dissuade women from making any kind of noise. And so it was funny because I was there, trying to encourage and yell like push, and everyone else was just like shh, shh. And so it was just a very different delivery experience than the ones I've had here in the States. But it was really great. And then the upper picture over there is kind of the post-op area. So women would come here with their babies afterwards. And it was also just a fun, every time a woman would come in, there'd be like huge round of applause. And it was just a cool community of women there supporting each other as they kind of came out of the L&D room and moved into the post-care. So I had a fun 2 weeks on the OB ward. You can go ahead to the next slide, Paul. And then I spent 2 weeks kind of working over with the peds ward. So a bunch of different kids there for a wide range of diagnoses. I would say a lot of people in the hospital in general are there kind of for musculoskeletal injuries. It's just a very physical life. And so they end up with a lot of different fractures and MSK type diagnoses. And so did a lot of that kind of care. Did see a couple malaria cases. Dr. Tuma has done incredible work helping to really decrease the incidence of malaria in the region. But we still did see a couple cases. We did have one kiddo die while I was there from malaria. So it was just a totally different, disease process than I had seen here. And then got to do, like similar to the MSK stuff, got to do a lot of casting, which was fun. So the picture on the right is us casting and doing a little bit of a reduction on a kiddo's, I forget what fracture he had, but some fracture there. So it was fun just getting to help out with all those different processes. And interesting too, they really, for anesthesia, they really use ketamine all the time, which I came back and I was like, why do we not use ketamine more? Because it's a really great drug, some interesting side effects, but we would use ketamine a lot for anesthesia. So I had a good 2 weeks working in the peds ward, and Dr. Tuma is pediatric trained too, so would round with him every Saturday in the peds ward. And then go ahead to the next slide, Paul. We also all helped out, kind of like Brianna said, in the operating theater. So they would have one day a week where they would just kind of set aside the whole day for different cases. And so that was just super interesting too, to see a lot of, a decent amount of ortho cases. They would really let us, super hands-on, they would really let us do everything. And the other interesting thing about the hospital too was, they very low resource, so they would have electricity for varying times during the day, and sometimes it would kind of turn off. And so the picture on the left, sometimes the electricity, or if it was late at night, we would just put on headlamps and just keep operating in the dark, which surprisingly worked. And then on the right, we had actually a visiting orthopedic surgeon come for a day in the theater, and so that was me helping with an ortho case. So that was fun too. And then kind of like Brianna said, we all kind of helped out in the outpatient department as well. So getting to help, just kind of triage people who came in, try to help answer whatever complaints they had, which was really, eye-opening too, and a good practice to be able to triage, added to the complicating factor of the language barrier, too, makes everything a little bit harder. So I guess just some sort of, just some thoughts I had from my whole experience there, some things I learned from Macha. Sorry, Paul, I don't think I have a slide for it. I would say one of the main, it's just interesting working in a place without as many resources. So kind of like Brianna said, it's very challenging, added to the language barrier, but you kind of have to use your own, history taking skills, physical exam skills to come up with your differential without the use of, lots of labs and images, which is a really good practice. So I agree with Brianna, that's really good in your medical training, I think, to be able to do something like this, just to be able to, to refine those skills. And then you have to be super creative, just trying to figure out, try one thing, see if it works. If it doesn't, try something else, and just be willing to, try and be wrong, and that's okay. I think with all global health in general, you have to learn to be extremely flexible. People work on very different schedules than you're used to and have very different practices and disciplines than you're used to, and so it's a skill to learn to be able to adapt to the situation that you're in and make do with what you have as well. And so I think it's a very important skill that you can learn with doing global health work as well. A few different things, just more about, just specific to Macha. It was a lot of times it was very overwhelming. I think I felt very, very helpless in the sense that I wanted to do things and didn't have the materials to do them. I felt like didn't have, the things I was used to doing for people in the States, I didn't have the ability to do. And that can be, I think, very, overwhelming. And it made me feel extremely, extremely helpless. And you also have to struggle with, you realize how far we've come in healthcare by seeing like even just the infant mortality rates in global health is kind of astounding. So I had to struggle a lot with experiencing death more frequently than I would have liked to there. We had a couple different infants die while we were there. And again, it's just really hard to deal with not having the diagnostics you want to be able to figure out what exactly is going on. And having to adapt to a lot of it is a result of resources. So we had this one little kiddo who was just, had been delivered that day and just really struggling, needed oxygen support, we weren't quite sure what was going on with him. And then, overnight the electricity went out and they lost their oxygen, and he didn't make it. And so it's one of those things where you're just like, this shouldn't happen, and then you realize we live in a very privileged place where we have access to electricity and we can, that doesn't really happen here. But just having to grapple with some of those inequalities and realize how important those things are. So I think it was definitely a stretching experience for me in terms of having to wrestle with a lot of that and experience a lot of that. But I was also amazed there with the community and the bond between patients. It was really cool how everyone would really come together. They had the fires out back where family members would stay and cook and bring in food for the patients there and really help support the people there, and even the bonds, I saw between the different moms and laborers was just a really cool community. I think our healthcare system is extremely individualized, which has its pros, but it can also have its cons. And so I think it was cool to see in Macha just a different way of doing medicine. What else? Also, I think it's good, just kind of like Brianna was saying, how do you do things here? And trying to listen to the patients' understandings there of what they thought was wrong and the different factors that they would really attribute to their disease states as well. It was fascinating. One particular day, I was rounding with Dr. Tuma, with Phil, in the peds. There's like a malnutrition ward as well, and one of the kiddos had unfortunately passed away the night before, and about 4 of the other families had just left that night too, and we were trying to figure, and the other families when we got there were extremely upset and hostile, and Phil was amazing at trying to navigate that. We were trying to figure out what is going on, and what we discovered was it was thought that if someone passed away, there was an evil spirit in that place, and so everyone else felt like they immediately had to evacuate the area. And so it was just really interesting, and Phil did an amazing job of just kind of trying to understand exactly where they were coming from and what their beliefs were surrounding it, and trying to navigate that and help try to convince them to stay and, invite people to continue to stay there and receive care. And he navigated that wonderfully. And it was just a really good reminder to me that it's easy, I think, to put your own thoughts and beliefs onto other people and say, well, how can you not believe this? How can you not believe that? But really trying to listen and understand how they view their illness and their situation is really needed if you're going to actually be able to provide care for people. And I think that goes, I think it's something that really comes up when you're in different cultures, but also is very present here in the States too. And so that was a really helpful practice for me to get into as well. Great. So currently, I think, my Macha experience and in a couple of my other global experiences really did help me learn the kind of doctor I wanted to be, which is very much a generalist, and I want to be able to, do as broad spectrum things as I can to meet whatever need I might need to. And so that kind of led me into deciding to do family medicine. I decided, especially globally, I realized women's health care and OB care is very important, but I didn't want that to be the only thing that I did. So I decided to go into family medicine, and I also picked a rural program, kind of more along those lines as well. I wanted somewhere where it would be a little bit more low resourced, because it's similar sometimes to your global health experiences, being in a really rural place as well. And then in the more rural places too, I found that you just get to do everything because there's not ready access to specialists and specialized care. So my global health experiences really did kind of help direct me into the kind of work I wanted to do. So I'm currently a third year down in Southern Oregon doing family medicine, and I am still really interested in global health. I'm hoping to do global health elective this spring. And in the future, I am still, I would love to work globally. So I don't know where exactly that will lead me, but Macha and all of my experiences have kind of culminated, and I really enjoy that type of medicine. It's very challenging and very stimulating. And I feel like you can really go abroad and meet a need anywhere you go. So I am thankful for that experience and the skills and perspectives that I gained from it, because they still continue to influence where I am today. And is that it, Paul? I think that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Okay, Leah, are you ready?
Yes, can everyone hear me? Thumbs up? Okay.
Yep.
All right, hi, my name is Leah Sittler. I am a fresh baby doctor. I just started residency. I'm in my first year of residency in pediatrics. And I traveled to Zambia actually twice in my medical school experience. So I'll share with you about those times, how they were different and similar, and how SET played a role in all of that. So next slide. A little bit about me. So my first taste of global medicine, and actually the thing that I think God used to really draw me into medicine, because I was actually pre-law when I started college, was some trips to San Pedro Sula, Honduras with a woman who I knew from church in San Diego. I continued to return to the same hospital and same place with her, and then actually started bringing groups of students from UCLA, where I did my undergrad studies, with me. So I would take teams ranging from like 8 to 14 students. I went every year from 2008 to 2013, and it was an experience that really like lit a fire under me, I think, and I was exposed to a lot of disparities, but also really inspired by the people I met, and really felt like I saw God move in really powerful ways, and I felt like he showed me a lot of really beautiful things about myself and who he needed me to be through those experiences. So that really drew me to medicine, and I think too, because of that, global medicine has been really married with my journey to become a doctor and my training as well. I went to UCLA for undergrad, where I studied biochemistry and Spanish, and then I also got a master's in global medicine before going to medical school at USC. And I recently graduated from Penn State with my MD, and now I'm in a pediatric residency program with UC Davis in Sacramento, California. And the things that really drew me to this program that I'm in are Sacramento is actually the most diverse city in the US, which I didn't know until I came to interview here. I really wanted to treat people from a huge global background. The largest refugee population is here in Sacramento, and my continuity clinic is actually at the Refugee Health Center. So I think I was just very drawn to that. Additionally, it has a pretty robust global health program where you get to return multiple times. And I think because global medicine has been such a big part of my journey, I really wanted that to be something that I had in my residency program as well. So we'll see. I'm only a few months in, but so far so good. So I first went to Macha in 2015 after my my first year of medical school. Penn State has a global scholar program where you go your first year, and the hope is that you'll also be able to go later on in your medical training as well. So the program goals, it was with a secular medical school, so it was culture, health practices. They wanted us to do a research project while we were there, but I had come from a Christian background. I was really stoked to go to Macha because the church that I attended in Harrisburg had some connections there. I'd heard really good things, and I think for me, I always kind of felt like I want to be a missionary doctor, but my trips to Honduras were in short spurts. And I really felt like I didn't have a tangible example of what it could look like to live in and be a constant presence in a community, and what it could look like to do that responsibly as a Westerner. So I was really, really stoked to go to Macha, and I had heard pretty awesome things about the program before I went. So that's a picture of me with the other students from Penn State who traveled with me on my first trip. So for the next slide, I participated in a project that was already ongoing. There's a lot of research that's based out of that site, thanks to Dr. Tuma. And I think the thing that was really cool for me, and very big contrast for previous like medical mission type trips I had gone on, was I felt like I was working side by side with my Zambian peers. The woman in the center picture is named Mutinta. She's one of the workers at the lab, and I like hopped on with a project she was working, looking at maternal to child transmission of HIV. And she would have us over, she taught us how to cook, we would hang out, she'd make fun of me because I'm a vegetarian in the States, but would try to eat meat when I travel because I don't want to be rude, but it's just hard for me, I just don't like it. So she learned that about me, so then she would invite me over almost every other day to try some new meat because she knew I wouldn't say no. And so I had beef liver and lots of really interesting things, and it was just a really fun experience for me, and I really felt like I was working side by side with people who were my Zambian peers. And I think too, God really opened my eyes. Dr. Tuma, everyone's talked about him, is just such an amazing person, and I think a very good role model for me as a young medical student, to see how you can be a humble leader, how you can really enact very tangible change in a community. And I think the longstanding presence of the hospital there, I think just speaks volumes to, just to the people who have set it up. And now, you know, it's mostly Zambian run, mostly Zambian staffed. And I think that's also something really unique and, you know, really the goal when we set up mission sites, right? So I think it was really cool to learn from that. I felt very inspired by my time there. And then, so I already talked a little bit about Mutinta on this next slide. I think I left with, and then Wanda, is that your son? I think she's on mute. That's Duncan, who is also working in that same lab with me in the middle there. And I think I just really felt renewed. The first year of medical school really, it's tough, and it really, I think, tore me down. But I think I felt really inspired. I saw kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, this could be the type of place that I could work. This could be the type of a tangible intervention that my life could be a part of. So I think that was really cool, and I was really excited. And Mutinta, at the time I was there, was pregnant. So WhatsApp is a really amazing thing as a messenger on your phone. I got to stay in contact with her for the next several years, and she would send me pictures of her baby, but I never actually got to meet her baby, and I was really excited and hoping that I would be able to return again. So in 2018, my last year of medical school, I wanted to go and do a more clinical-based rotation. So my first time there was focused on like learning about the culture in the town of Macha, and also the research project with maternal child transmission of HIV, and like it was more like lab work, testing type of stuff. I wanted to go and be almost a doctor there in that community and get some more hands-on, tangible medical exposure to kind of what it could look like to be working in a medical context in that area. So I think thanks to SET, I was able to return and to go back to the community that I had kind of learned to love. So from my schooling standpoint, kind of the goal was to learn how to practice medicine in an under-resourced international setting. And for me, my medical training was coming to an end, and I was really excited to reconnect with my friends that I had met there, and with God, and continued to receive kind of guidance and discernment as I was moving forward and about to decide. I submitted my match list while I was there in Macha, where I would go for my residency program. And I got to meet Chileleko, who is Mutinta's daughter. So Mutinta continued to have us over. There she is, showing us how to make nshima some more. I was very inadequate at it. She was a very patient teacher, and it was so special to get to meet my friend's baby, who I had only met when she was in the womb prior. And it was just a really special time to be able to be back. And we were back in the rainy season too, which was very, very different than the dry season. And it's just so cool to see the vibrant community come to life in a different way. And then my focus of my time and my work there was much more clinical. I think Brianna and Katie really hit the nail on the head with describing the experiences. You work with Zambian physicians, there's US trained physicians there as well, and then medical officers, and you kind of work with everyone. You really get to tailor the experience to what you're interested in. So some of the other medical students who were there when I was there were interested in OBGYN, and they just lived in the labor ward. And I was interested in peds, so I just hung out with kids all day long, and it was really wonderful. Also got that operating room experience, which is really not my cup of tea. And yeah, you're right. They use ketamine for everything. But it was really cool to see hands-on what that looked like and to be able to compare and contrast to the US. And I think too, a unique challenge, and the others touched on this as well, is learning how to communicate with patients when there's a very obvious cultural and language barrier. So I had remembered a little bit of Tonga from my time a few years back. And I kind of made it my personal goal by the end of my month there to be able to do like a very basic history in Tonga, where if the patients just answer yes and no clearly, I can get kind of an idea of what's going on. And especially because translators were a little bit scarce when I was there, and we did really have to rely a lot on pantomime and stuff with communication with the patients. It was I think it was a really cool goal, and by the end I think I was able to meet it, and I had my little clinical Tonga I wrote in my notebook. And I was able to kind of communicate with patients by the end of my time. Additionally, I think it was just really cool to see things that, yeah, like the other girls mentioned, I didn't get to see in the United States. We had a lot of tuberculosis, not maybe like 1 or 2 cases of malaria while I was there, not many. A lot of congestive heart failure from strep infection, which is kind of sad because it's not something you see a lot in the US, and there's not a lot that you can do about it once the kids are in heart failure from it. And especially in Zambia, there's not, cardiac surgery is such a hard thing to come by in the United States even. Yeah, I think it really opened my eyes a lot. And I think it's really hard anytime that I think I interact with kids in an under-resourced international setting. I'm very heartbroken by how differently it seems that lives are valued in the world, how the life of a child in the United States, you know, for no reason seems to hold more value than the life of a child in Zambia. They have access to more things. They have access to different care. We're able to save them in situations where in Zambia it's just not possible. And I think that's something that really breaks my heart. And I think in times like that, God reminds me of one of my favorite verses, which is a very simple verse. And just that after Lazarus, Jesus' friend, dies, when Jesus wept, that 2-word verse. And I think I'm just reminded that God's heart breaks for those things that break our hearts. God's heart breaks for the injustices in the world, and he does cry with us when we're heartbroken by things that should not be happening, like children dying and sickness and inequality in care and access to care. And I think it's experiences like this and reminders like that that keep fueling me forward in my journey to become a good doctor. And yeah, I think next slide. I think that I'm very grateful for my time in Zet. I think that my time in Zambia really helped shape my medical training and shaped me as I thought about the kind of doctor I want to become and the kind of patients I want to serve. moving forward, I'm kind of just in survival mode in the first year of residency. I feel like I'm very much living day to day, week to week, month to month. But I know that I will have opportunity to travel internationally and do work in a project in an international setting as part of my training. And I really do hope that, you know, I don't necessarily feel like I have a clear call or can say with confidence where I'll end up in my career, but I really hope that international medicine and being a missionary doctor in one way or another is a part of what's in store for me. So I'm very, very grateful for SET and for MHF and for the opportunities that I had to learn and grow in Zambia.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so very much. So do we have enough time to ask any questions? Or
We have, yeah, at least 5 minutes. So.
I think one of the things that struck me for all of you is that you have integrated your faith and your values. And I really appreciate that. So one of the worries I have as an educator, as an academic, and is when we try experiences like this, are they worthwhile? I mean, do we do the Barbie Savior thing? Or is this service experience in health training and practice worthwhile? Do any of you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's something I struggle with a lot because I worry that the effect that they have on the community there can be detrimental. And I think a lot of short-term missions can be detrimental. I do think, you know, the main benefit honestly comes to the person going. And I struggle with that because I'm not, it's good in some ways because I think it does inspire in us, you know, those desires to continue to help the underserved, the least among us, the people with low access, and it has inspired me to want to work in underserved communities. But I do struggle with is it worth it for, you know, potential negative effects on the community? And so I think I've seen certain ways that it's done well. And I think the ways when it is done well is in a place like Macha that has a long-term standing relationship with that community, with providers who have been there for a long time and can help bring learners in a way that is not too aggressive or insensitive. And there is a way to have, you know, follow up and people who are continuing to be there. So I would say the ways that when it's done well is in a situation like Macha, and that's what made me feel more comfortable going to Macha.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think it's something that I struggle with, I continue to struggle with, and it's something that I felt not even in an international context, but in the United States as a medical student. You know, participating in medical care, visiting patients, trying to come up with plans, and I think often feeling like I am not qualified to, you know, be talking to this patient about their diagnosis. I'm not qualified, you know, to be participating in the surgery in the way that I'm participating. And unfortunately, that's kind of part of medical school training in general, even in the US. I think in an international context, I think it's very important in a medical school setting not to do things that you wouldn't do in the United States as a student. So I think something that we were kind of really told before we go there is if it's not something someone would have had you do in the US, don't do it there. Things like assisting in surgeries, like I had done that in the US, so I felt okay assisting. I'm definitely not going to be, you know, the #1 person doing a C-section because that's not something that I could do in the US either. So I think that was kind of helpful to be able to have those barriers and to navigate and know I can participate in some ways but not in others. And yeah, I 100% agree with Katie. I think that mission, especially short-term mission, and for us as just visitors into this site, it's really it's really easy to kind of have that white savior mentality of like, oh, I'm coming to like save these people and provide service to the poor people. But in reality, you know, we have to realize what we're taking in that context as well. And so I think exactly as Katie, keeping understanding and knowing that we are receiving and we are taking, and having that humble attitude, I think is really, really important. I go back and forth with people on this, and I go back and forth with myself on it. Short-term missions, are they even, you know, a good thing? And I think that they are with the right attitude, because I've seen in myself short-term mission completely change my outlook on life, completely change my life's trajectory, and God used it to really powerfully shape who I become. But I think I have to understand that and be grateful to the people in international contexts who have hosted me and sacrificed in order for me to learn and grow from my experiences with their lives.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything Leah and Katie said. I think, you know, the importance of being in a setting where there is continuity for the patients, there's continuity for the providers, where what I really tried to look at it as like this, for me, my primary goal here is to learn from people. I'm not coming here to try and bring anything different or save anyone or, you know, necessarily, you know, be this great provider. I'm just coming here to learn. And I think that made it a much better experience for me compared to some of the short-term trips I had gone on, where it felt like the focus was like, we are the group bringing the supplies, bringing the medical care, we drop it off, we leave, and then what happens after we leave, it seems like no one cares. And I don't think that's necessarily how it always is, but I think having such a strong community like a place like Macha that operates on its own without anyone else there, and then is such a strong community that's willing to welcome other people, I think is a huge blessing. And I think there is a lot of benefit for the learners that go there in terms of how we all said, how it impacts your career, how it impacts your learning. So I think just like everyone else said, there's a lot of benefit to it if it's done in the right way. And I think Macha does do it extremely well.
Well, thank you. Thank you too for helping us as we do continue with SEC and MHF and continue with applications and hopefully encouraging others in the years to come.